parents wanted to stage a special reunion with their golden child at my wedding after she ghosted them, but they can do whatever they want when I have my wedding elsewhere. For a long time, I, 29, thought my parents were genuinely excited about my wedding. After all, I was their only daughter now, or at least the only one who still spoke to them. My older sister, 32, had vanished from our lives years ago, cutting off all contact after wronging them in a way they never fully explained. They didn't want to talk about it now, and I had learned to stop asking. So when they threw themselves wholeheartedly into planning my wedding, I took it as them trying to make up for lost time. My fiancé, Brendan, 32, and I had envisioned a small, intimate wedding, but my parents were determined to be involved in every detail. They insisted on managing the guest list, the seating chart, and even some elements of the ceremony. At first, I was touched. I figured they just wanted to feel included, and I didn't see any harm in letting them help. But as the months passed, I started to notice odd things. For instance, my opinions were disregarded more often than I liked. I'd mention a song I wanted for my walk down the aisle, only for my mother to say she already had something special in mind. I'd talk about keeping the ceremony small, but my father kept hinting that weddings were meant to be family gatherings. Then there was the secrecy. They'd take hushed phone calls whenever I entered the room. I'd overhear snippets of conversations about people I didn't recall inviting, and when I asked, they'd say things like, "Don't worry, sweetie, we just added a few close relatives, it's nothing." The breaking point came when I accidentally overheard a conversation between them. I'd stopped by their house unannounced one evening to drop off some paperwork they'd left at my place. They didn't hear me come in, and before I could call out to them, I heard my mother's voice coming from the kitchen. She was talking to my dad, and her tone was pure excitement. She was saying how she couldn't wait to see my reaction when my sister made a surprise entrance at the wedding, how it would be the moment of the night, something people would be talking about for years. My father chuckled, saying he'd already spoken to a few relatives about it, and everyone thought it was a fantastic idea. It was the perfect way to reunite the family, and even though I might be shocked at first, I'd surely get over it. After all, what bride wouldn't want her estranged sister back in her life? All this time, they hadn't been planning my wedding to celebrate me, they'd been planning it as a stage, a carefully orchestrated event to force a reconciliation I'd never asked for. I backed away before they could notice me and drove home. I'd spent months thinking their involvement was out of love, only to realize they were more interested in using me as a pawn in their family reunion fantasy. Brendan knew immediately something was wrong when I got home. I told him everything. When I finished, he didn't hesitate. He said this was our wedding, and if my parents couldn't respect that, then we needed to take control before it was too late. I spent all night thinking about this, which made me angrier and couldn't fall asleep. So it was a vicious cycle of frustration and anger towards my parents. By morning, my mind was made up. I wasn't going to let this happen. I called my parents and told them I was coming over to talk. My mom was completely unsuspecting, probably thinking I was going to discuss last-minute wedding plans. My dad said he was glad because they had a few things they wanted to discuss with me too. It made me laugh that they still thought they were in control. I arrived at their house and didn't bother with pleasantries. I told them I knew everything. At first they feigned ignorance, acting confused, but I told them to drop the act. I'd overheard them last night. They kept saying they didn't know what I was talking about, so I repeated word for word what I'd heard, both the reunion idea and that it didn't matter what I thought because I'd surely get over it. The expression on my mom's face shifted from fake confusion to poorly concealed guilt. Finally, my mom spoke first. She said she didn't understand why I was so upset. Didn't I see how important this was for our family? This wedding, she said, was the perfect opportunity to get my sister back. She said she'd dreamed of this moment for years and of course they were excited about my wedding, but this was bigger than just me. My dad chimed in, saying that sometimes in life you had to make sacrifices for the greater good. He told me I was being selfish, that I was willing to throw away the chance to mend our family just because I wanted things my way. It's not that I didn't want my sister back, it bothered me that my parents were using my wedding when they could do all this some other time to reconcile with her. And they were doing it all behind my back when it came to my wedding. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I asked them if they'd ever considered how I felt. My wedding wasn't a reunion. It wasn't just any ordinary day, it was about Brendan and me. That night, Brendan and I decided we were going to plan the wedding we wanted, without them. We started looking at entirely different venues, slashing the guest list my parents had insisted on padding. If they wanted a reunion so badly, they could throw one themselves. The only thing is that there will be no bride and groom, but they'll take care of that. They'll surely get over it when they find out. At least the only good thing about all this is that I've gotten my wedding back and seen the true faces of my parents. I don't think it was that bad, because in the end we have the wedding we had planned with my fiancé again. Before continuing, don't forget to subscribe. New stories every day. Update 1. It's been 15 days since I posted. The silence didn't last long. My parents found out we were planning another wedding, and they weren't going to accept simply being excluded from the wedding without a fight. But I underestimated just how relentless they would be. The following morning, my mother started calling me nonstop. When I didn't answer, she switched to texting, sending paragraph-long messages about how she understood I was emotional right now, but I needed to calm down and think about what I was doing. Because for her, none of this was okay. My father chimed in, saying he thought this was some kind of punishment just because they were good parents and had tried to do something nice for me. He said it was their fault for spoiling me and now I was behaving like an entitled brat. It was their fault for being too good to me. I won't tell you what I said to them because I didn't reply. Instead, I focused on what actually mattered, fixing the mess they'd created. Brendan and I sat down that morning with a fresh notebook, crossing out every single plan my parents had been involved in. The venue, gone. The guest list, rebuilt from scratch. The catering, we picked something we actually liked instead of the expensive, fussy menu, which I'm sure tasted like wet underwear, my mom had insisted on. It's been a lot of work, but it feels like our wedding again. But the moment my parents realized I was serious, they escalated their attack. First, they called our extended family. I started getting messages from aunts, uncles, and cousins. Some were genuinely confused about the wedding changing. Others were downright furious, especially those who were on my mother's padded guest list. She told everyone that she simply wanted to celebrate my wedding in the most meaningful way possible, and I was being unreasonable and was thinking of changing the wedding to something more intimate because it was fashionable. Some relatives tried to reason with me, telling me that a wedding is a once-in-a-lifetime event and couldn't be small. Also, they supported my parents because they were the poor victims here. I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I let them talk while I quietly moved forward with my new wedding plans, cutting anyone who sided with my parents. But then, my parents made their next move. I had already sent a cancellation notice to the original venue because I didn't want to receive any extra charges. But when I called to confirm everything, the coordinator hesitated. She told me she had spoken with my mother an hour earlier, who had assured her the plans were still on. I told the coordinator that my parents were no longer involved in my wedding and that she should ignore any communication from them. The woman apologized and assured me that she would process the cancellation immediately. I don't know why, but I found it odd that she saw it as normal. I guess it must not be the first wedding with problems because of the bride and groom's parents. Still, I knew this wasn't over. Sure enough, not even an hour later, my mother called me, furious, after learning the venue was cancelled. This time, I answered. She accused me of ruining their plans by cancelling the venue, saying she'd already told everyone the wedding would be held there and the idea for their reunion was based on that venue. I said, it's my wedding and I'll do what I want. If you want a fancy reunion with my sister, organize it another day. That's when she dropped her trump card, or at least what she thought was a trump card. She told me that if I refused to reinstate the wedding as they had planned it, then she and my dad wouldn't attend at all. I almost laughed because I had been making the wedding 2.0 plans and hadn't told them they weren't invited. She said it like it was a threat, like she thought I'd suddenly panic and beg them to come back. But if there was one thing I was sure of, it was that the wedding was going to be better not only for the organization but because they wouldn't be there. I told her that was fine. She went completely silent because she wasn't expecting that. Then she started backpedaling, saying she didn't mean it, that she was just trying to get me to see reason. I replied that the idea sounded fantastic, and thanked her for the suggestion. Then I hung up. Not only have they uninvited themselves, but now they think I've done it now, when it was actually already planned. I've been killing myself laughing about that. Update 2. It's been weeks, which in family drama years is an eternity. So here's the scoop. With my parents out of the picture, Brendan and I dove into planning a better wedding. You already knew that. The changes were that we chose a stunning outdoor venue, completely different from the grand ballroom my mother had picked. The guest list is filled with people who genuinely love and support us, not just distant relatives we're obligated to invite for appearances' sake. They're people who haven't made us feel bad like my parents or their flying monkeys. Like our closest friends, and Brendan's family, who supported me without hesitation. Planning the wedding became fun again. Then, 3 weeks before the wedding, my parents made one last attempt to smooth things over. I came home one evening to find a handwritten letter tucked into my door. It wasn't stamped, meaning it had been hand-delivered. Inside, my mother had poured her heart out, or whatever she has in her chest, claiming she never meant to hurt me. She went on and on about how much she loved me, about how this whole situation had spiraled out of control. She begged me to let go of the past and let them back into my life. She promised that if I did, they would support whatever I wanted. No more surprise reunions, no more hidden agendas. It was a beautifully written letter, I must say, filled with everything she knew I wanted to hear. But it meant nothing. But there's no apology that could undo this. I threw the letter away without replying. It was then I'd made peace with the fact that they would never be part of my wedding, or my life in any meaningful way. They chose that, not me. Update 3. It's time for more drama with my wedding. An unknown number popped up on my phone a few afternoons ago. It said, "Hey, can we talk?" It's me. After all these years, after everything that had happened, now she wanted to talk? It was my sister, and we hadn't spoken since she vanished, leaving my parents in this state of absolute stupidity. She had cut off all contact with us without explanation. My parents spent years trying to track her down, making up excuses to justify her absence because they didn't want people to know about the family's dirty laundry. And now, just weeks before my wedding, she magically reappeared. I was hesitant to answer or not. I don't have anything against her, besides having cut off contact with me, but the association with my parents is something that can cause an ulcer. But another message came through. I heard about what happened with Mom and Dad. I just want to explain. I'd spent so long wondering why she'd disappeared. I told her to call. The call came within seconds. She said she'd been so scared to contact me, that she missed me more than I could imagine. She said she'd heard about the wedding and all the drama with our parents, and she hated that I'd had to go through that alone. I cut her off and asked her why she really disappeared. I wanted the truth. She went quiet, then gave a nervous laugh and said it was complicated. I told her to uncomplicate it. She hemmed and hawed again, then said something about how she'd felt trapped by our parents, that they had too many expectations, and she just needed to get away to find herself. I told her that she didn't just walk away, she disappeared. She didn't even have the decency to tell me anything. She accused me of being too young to understand at the time. She said I'd always been the golden child, the perfect one, the one who never did anything wrong in Mom and Dad's eyes, while she'd had to bear the brunt of their expectations. I asked her if she was serious and reminded her that our parents never saw me the same way they saw her. She had been their favorite because it was always about her according to my parents. She scoffed and said I was delusional. That's when I lost my patience. I told her the only reason they'd gotten so involved in the wedding was because they saw it as an opportunity to bring her back. I asked her point blank if she knew about our parents' plan, if she'd been in on it. She denied it immediately, way too quickly. I pressed her. She said she would never do that to me, that she'd tried to contact me now because she really wanted to fix things. I didn't believe her. I told her that if she really wanted to fix things, she should start by telling me the truth. Not just about why she left, but why she'd stayed away for so long. She said she had her reasons. I told her I didn't care about her reasons anymore. She had chosen to leave, chosen to stay away, and now she had to live with that choice. She tried to interrupt me, tried to say something else, but I didn't let her. I told her that she couldn't disappear for years and then waltz back into my life like she suddenly cared. She couldn't show up now, after all the damage was done, and expect me to welcome her with open arms. Update 4. It started with an offhand comment from my fiancé, Brendan. He was scrolling through his phone when he muttered that someone had been blowing up his messages. I barely looked up from my computer, figuring it was work-related, but then he said her name, my sister. I asked how she'd even gotten his number and he sighed, rubbing his forehead. He said he had no doubt my parents had given it to her. Apparently, she'd left a string of messages, some apologetic, some casual, and a few trying to play the concerned future sister-in-law card. I asked him what she'd said and he unlocked his phone and handed it to me without hesitation. The first message was simple: "Hi, I know we don't know each other, but I really want to talk to you." Then another: "I just want to understand what's going on. I feel like there's been a lot of miscommunication." And another: "I don't want to cause any trouble. I just miss my family and I hate that things have gotten so messy before the wedding." I kept scrolling. She'd been persistent. There were longer messages where she tried to paint herself as the misunderstood victim. She said she just wanted to fix things, that she hated how the family had been torn apart. Then, in one particularly irritating message, she had the audacity to say that I must have misinterpreted her leaving, that she'd only left because she was in a difficult place mentally and needed time. I asked Brendan if he'd responded to any of them and he shook his head. Then, as if reading my mind, he took his phone back and typed a single message: "Do not contact me again," and sent it. It should have ended there, but it didn't. A few days later, Brendan came home from work looking annoyed. I barely had time to ask him what was wrong before he tossed his phone onto the kitchen counter and said my sister had called him. He answered without looking. He explained that she'd tried to sound cheerful, acting like nothing had happened, as if they were just two future-in-laws catching up. Brendan cut her off immediately and told her he wasn't interested in whatever sob story she was about to concoct. She started pleading, saying she wasn't trying to cause problems, that she just wanted to talk to me, but I wasn't giving her a chance. Brendan told her if she really wanted to fix things, she would have done it years ago, not conveniently show up when our parents needed her. She got defensive. She said it wasn't fair that I was shutting her out, that it was cruel to treat her like a stranger when we used to be so close. She insisted she deserved to be a part of my life. He told her she was the one who had become a stranger, that she was the one who abandoned her family, not the other way around. Then he said something that made me want to kiss him right then and there. He told her she wasn't entitled to my forgiveness just because she suddenly decided she wanted it. She didn't like that. She flew off the handle, saying he didn't know anything about our family and had no right to get involved. He told her that he did have a right to get involved because she had chosen to involve him. He also told her that as my fiancé, as the man who had seen firsthand how I dealt with the pain she left behind, he had every right to keep her out of our lives on my behalf. She tried again, softening her voice, attempting to sound pitiful. Brendan wasn't fooled. He told her frankly that her manipulation wasn't going to work on him, and then ended the call. The next morning, he got a text from my mother. It said she couldn't believe what Brendan had done, that my sister had been devastated after their conversation. I didn't even bother to respond. Instead, I blocked her number. Brendan did the same with my sisters. And just like that, the door slammed shut once and for all. Update 5. I wasn't surprised when my mom tried to make another play before the wedding. I found out about her attempt to drag Brendan's mother into her mess when my mother-in-law called me a few weeks before the wedding. Thankfully, I have a good mother-in-law, and she called me sounding slightly amused. She told me my mom had called her, acting like they were old friends and saying she just needed a mother's advice on how to fix this rift between us. At first, my mother-in-law had assumed she was calling to apologize or to try and find some common ground, but she quickly realized my mom had no interest in that. My mom had started out by sighing dramatically, saying she simply didn't understand why I was so insistent on keeping my own parents away from the most important day of my life. She claimed that she and my dad had only wanted to do something special for me, and it wasn't their fault I'd overreacted. She framed it as if they'd simply been overly excited about my wedding, and I'd punished them by shutting them out completely. My mother-in-law let her talk for a while before calmly asking what exactly it was they'd planned for my wedding that had made me feel so strongly about keeping them away. My mom tried to dodge the question, saying it was all a misunderstanding that had been blown out of proportion. Then she switched tactics, playing the heartbroken mother card, saying she never imagined her own daughter would turn her back on her family just because of a little disagreement. When my mother-in-law asked what she meant by little disagreement, my mom started to get frustrated. She said that as a mother, my mother-in-law should understand how painful it must be to have a daughter who refused to see reason. She said a mother should always be able to reconcile with their children because family is more important than pride. That's when my mother-in-law decided she'd heard enough. Very firmly, she told my mom that she did understand what it meant to be a mother, and that was precisely why she knew that respect between parents and children wasn't one-sided. She said she'd always believed relationships should be built on mutual understanding, not manipulation. And then she said something that left my mom completely flustered. She said she trusted my decisions. That's when my mom started to panic. She tried to twist the narrative again, saying she should at least talk to me and try to fix things before it was too late. But my mother-in-law told her she wasn't going to play messenger. She said that if I decided to distance myself from my parents, it was because I had very valid reasons for doing so, and if my mom truly wanted to be at my wedding, she should have started by apologizing instead of trying to manipulate her way back in. My mom was silent for a long moment before making one last attempt to guilt-trip her. She asked my mother-in-law how she would feel if Brendan ever abandoned her the way I'd abandoned them. And that's when my mother-in-law laughed. She told her Brendan didn't need to abandon her because she'd never given him a reason to. She'd always respected his decisions, never tried to force him to do something he didn't want to, and certainly never lied to or manipulated him just to get her way. So, if my mother was being abandoned, maybe she should take a long, hard look at why. Then my mom, as usual lately, got hung up on. And I can attest to the things my mother-in-law said. She's always been like a second mother to me, and she's never tried anything remotely similar. Update 6. I went ahead with my wedding. The ceremony was intimate, we kept the guest list small, there were no changes in the invitation list, if you know what I mean. Brendan's family was wonderful. His mother, despite knowing all the drama that had unfolded, never mentioned it. She simply hugged me and told me I looked beautiful as I walked down the aisle. I didn't think about the people who weren't there. I didn't think about my mother or my father. I didn't think about my sister. Brendan, standing at the altar, waiting for me with a smile, made every ounce of stress I'd ever felt over this wedding completely irrelevant. After the wedding, I received a single text from my mother. It was short. It said she hoped I was happy and that she couldn't believe I'd let a wedding tear our family apart. I read it once, and that was enough, then deleted it without replying because she was wrong. A wedding hadn't torn our family apart, she had. Update 7. Everyone has been asking me to talk to my sister to find out why she left and get some explanation, but I was against the idea because I knew my sister was part of my parents' plan and that has been confirmed. However, I received an email a few days ago congratulating me on the wedding and also explaining her reasons for leaving. I hope this is the same as talking to her because after reading her email I think I have even less desire to do so. As I said, she started by congratulating me on my wedding and lamenting not being there. A bit of manipulation and a bit of victimhood as she mentioned that she wished she could have talked to me. She also admitted that she knew about our parents' plan and went along with it because she wanted our reunion to be special. But here comes what surely matters to you, the reason why she walked away from everyone, including me. I'm saying that our parents were always very demanding, which is strange, because they haven't been with me, at least not in the way they were with her. They had high expectations for her and she was overwhelmed by wanting to please them. If that doesn't mean she's the golden child, I don't know what does. Anyway, she escaped and started a new life away from them. And it wasn't until recently, after years of therapy, that she felt the need to return. Or at least that's what she has said. Even so, I don't understand why she had to walk away from me too, or why do everything at my wedding. She could have had her family reunion before and simply been another guest at the wedding. This whole business of making it special in the middle of my wedding is what bothers me the most because there were many other days to do it, not exactly that one. That's why I don't think she's as innocent as she wants to appear. I also believe that she has manipulated my parents and is likely to disappear from their lives again. Either way, that's something I'm not interested in because I've also decided to remove my parents from mine. That's what I have to tell you, and I'm sure it will be the last. My wedding has not only been a wedding as such, but also a turning point in my life. My parents and my sister are part of the life before my wedding, and the next part one want to start from scratch, without them involved.